Good morning out there, traders. It is May 2nd, 2024, and welcome to the Apteros Daily Market Insight. Let's start with our recap from yesterday, and then we will update our session plan and levels for today. So, taking a look at what was going on yesterday, a kind of wild afternoon with a really snoozer of a morning. Um, a quick note on that, right? If you end up seeing a morning where the volatility is considerably low and, quite a tight range or whatever, if that ever happens, you definitely want to check your news and see if anything is slated to come out in the afternoon. Because often with big news events or something like that, you'll have a kind of back and forth, really low volatility morning before that news hits. And essentially, that's exactly what we ended up seeing here today. Now, that's not always the case, but if you are in a situation where you're like, man, this market really isn't going anywhere, really isn't doing anything, double check the news just to make sure there's not a bigger announcement coming later in the afternoon. It's a good tip for anybody, but as traders, you should be aware of the news pretty much all the time. I know I don't mention it in these preps because these preps are from a technical perspective. They're not really focused on news and news-driven events, and you can see that often we end up in good spots to nail news-driven events. So it's just one of those situations where, as a trader, it's your job to be aware of these things and understand the implications they have on your trading. So, taking a look at what was going on yesterday, we had a line in the sand here. General expectation with scenario one is that this area holds, right? So we were coming into the open right around this zone here. It pulls back, and we start seeing opportunities one after the other to essentially go along with scenario one. Problem is no release, right? No real push to the upside, no real volatility or anything like that coming out of that zone. So not exactly the greatest spot in the morning. But nonetheless, we have the lows kind of in our line in the sand area there. And the news comes in and releases this market straight up to our main target for scenario one. Doesn't give an opportunity for the inflection up here at scenario three, right? So playing two lines in the sand, holding that upper line in the sand there, no real inflection along that area. Then, of course, it blasts up to our neutral target, kind of going along with getting up above there and stabilizes here and starts shooting back down again. No opportunity to get long. Reaccepts down below, pulls back in. An opportunity to kind of get short here, but a compromised one. And the reason why I say it's compromised is because the acceptance picture is a little questionable with a straight move down like that in terms of rhythm. You can see where that rhythm is there. It's not really like the best of situations. So if you were getting in short here, it was based on a compromised rhythm acceptance picture, and you would have had some other information there to really be looking for that short. And of course, that's kind of how it finishes out the day. Back into our bullish line in the sand where we've released out of now, coming back into today's session. So, what are the big themes here, according from yesterday even into today? One of the big themes is I've been talking about the upper time frames are still in generally rotational locations. So we're seeing back and forth price action, and it's a lot of that on upper time frames. Now, on lower time frames, yesterday it wasn't quite that obvious. The downside was really what was in play yesterday for the shorter term time frames. With this movement yesterday, a lot of that has shifted. So let's talk about what's going on today. All right, so taking a look at what's going on today, we have a rotational picture across many time frames. What does that do for us in terms of DMI and all that kind of stuff? It puts us in a place where chop and back and forth type of price action can be expected. In other words, rotational moves, kind of collapsing and things like that, are a little bit more common. So what we're dealing with here now is this is the actual rotational picture on a lot of the lower time frames. So it's a pretty wide area. Now the problem with that is in between we have some areas on our lower time frames that we can use for neutral continuations, pullbacks, destinations, things like that. So today's DMI landscape isn't the greatest because essentially we're looking at a pretty wide rotational zone in scenario one. And the expectation here is that we go from low to high and from high to low, right? And that's the general gist that we've been seeing. The recency in this area is not great. So we've been kind of rotating around in this zone, especially at the lows, for a while. And we have multiple time frames down here at the lows that are all set up to be, kind of looking for a release for the bulls. So our general expectation today is this lower area is bullish in nature, and it's the more confluent zone. And for us to continue upwards from this area into this overall destination here, that's the main kind of trade idea that's in play for us today. Now, for that to happen, for that to occur, we have to continue to hold above neutral areas. So, in other words, during the session here, the neutral areas can be used for continuation. In other words, right now, this line in the sand is bullish, and this neutral area is bullish based on the acceptance picture, right? If we pull back into here, it's a low level, not line in the sand type of area, but an area we could see an inflection back to the upside. If it doesn't hold or breaks down, we come back into the line in the sand. That's where we end up seeing, are we in scenario 1 where we hold up, or does everything start to shift in this market? Do we see scenario 2 develop, and this area, this line in the sand, starts to really come under pressure and breaks down and continues to the downside into that first target for scenario 2? All right, so that's kind of the overall landscape we find ourselves in with today's prep. Very rotational back and forth. We have some neutral areas in the middle that we can use for continuation ideas. The current expectation with scenario 1 is that we possibly continue to push up into this bearish zone here, and we're looking for neutral zones to hold as well to that upside for continuation plays and continuation ideas. If these do not hold up, continuation back into the line in the sand where we test that line in the sand, test this overall market rotational landscape here at this point, and if that fails, switch to scenario 2 down into this lower edge here. All right, that's our general game plan around the session for today. Now, things that could happen as this market develops, if we get up above this bear zone, there are destinations up higher, but things get really difficult, let's just say, for the upside up into this zone. So we'd have to have a pretty bullish day, a lot of bullish activity, a trending type of day to the upside to really start pushing outside of really this area here, which is the kind of rotational highs on our immediate shorter time frames. If we get up above that, then we're definitely heading towards the upper edge of the rotational bigger time frames. And that's kind of the way it's all laid out for us. All right. So trade well out there, mind your risk, mind your process, have a wonderful trading day, and make sure that you keep those things in check and control the things that you absolutely can.